Okay, so yeah, so today this is the blueprint that already we have discussed in the earlier class. So today we are going to discuss about something called as, so we already completed process concepts. We discussed about process scheduling. Right now in the previous session we discussed about operational process. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about this particular part, something called as inter-process communication. So in this, as I told you, we have only two different type of methods which we are going to focus on, something called as shared memory system and message passing system. Now using these two things, we people will be say, okay, we will see around these two methods. How? So shared memory can be used within our system. So within our system, when multiple processes are created, in order to make them communicate with each other, we can use shared memory. But whereas coming to the processes which are present in different systems and they want to communicate with each other, we can use a scenario called as message passing system. In that way, you people can remember. So today we are going to discuss these two concepts in our coming slides. So first comes is inter-process communication. So let's have a brief introduction related to your inter-process communication, and based on that we'll start moving to your methods. So inter-process communication is nothing but, see, as I told you, our system actually consists of multiple processes, and these processes might want to communicate with other processes. Now some processes may be independent. So here we divide or we classify the process into two types. Okay, so one is dependent, independent, one is cooperating. Okay, so one is independent. What do you mean by independent here is nothing but these are the processes which will not be affecting other processes, neither they will get affected by them. Like something like solo performance. Okay, so these processes will perform only individually all the operations whatever they wanted to do. Okay, they will not be affecting the other processes which are executing. They will not have any kind of interaction with other processes. Only they will do what the work they have been assigned and they'll just move out from that particular system. The other type what we are saying is cooperating process is nothing but this is something like they will interact with other processes. Okay, they will interact with other processes, they will try to share the information with them, and based on that they will performing operations. So that is what comes under cooperating process. So usually in our operating system, we need to provide something called as cooperating kind of environment. Like, okay, because these processes may require some information from other processes or they may wanted to get interact with other processes. So in that reason, we need to provide an environment where these particular processes can communicate with each other. So what are the reasons why we need to provide this particular inter-process communication means? First and foremost thing is information sharing. Now let us suppose within a system we have two different type of processes. Let us suppose we have P1 and P2 and we have a resource here. Okay. Now this particular process want to use this particular resource. This is your resource. And same with this particular process also wanted to access this particular resource. Now how they can access them? So that's the scenario here. So definitely they should communicate. What happens if these two processes are not communicating with each other, then they will simultaneously try to access this particular resource. Then what will happen? Since we have only a single resource here, we cannot assign this to both of them simultaneously. There will be a problem. So there should be some kind of synchronization. What do you mean with synchronization is nothing but they should have some kind of communication in order to make sure they gather the information and they don't conflict with each other with respect to that particular resource. That is what is saying in this particular thing. So that's what comes under your information sharing. Next, we want to speed up the computation. So how we people can speed up the computation means here whatever the task that particular process is executing. Let us suppose we have a process P1 and it is having some task it has to do it. Now this particular task will be split it into subtasks. Okay. How we are increasing the speed of that particular execution is nothing but we are simply splitting this particular task, whatever we have, we are splitting it up into different subtasks. Okay, these are the subtasks. So all these subtasks will be executed simultaneously, and after that whatever the results are there, we will be merging it up, and finally you'll get the solution for that particular process. So whatever the task that the solution, the process is trying to execute, that it has performed well. Okay, so that is what actually happens in this particular scenario. Now apart from that, remember this what I said, like splitting the processes into multiple processes, multiple subtasks performing. This can be done only if we have a multi-processor kind of architecture. If we have multiple processors in our system, then only we can perform this particular thing, or else it's not possible. Next, we have something called as modularity. So modularity is nothing but our operating system, whatever we are discussing, it's very complex in nature. So we cannot create them in a single stretch. So we need to divide them into different modules that we already discussed. We have something called as process management. So for process management, we people are creating a separate kind of video. After that, we have something called as memory management. Okay, this is separate kind of program. Imagine that these are the programs. These are the functions we are creating. This is one kind of function. We call it as a module. This is another module. And then finally we have device. For device controlling, let us suppose we have device management. Same way for communication, we have communication management. Now all these modules should be integrated perfectly so that you people can able to get a perfect operating system. If these modules are not integrated perfectly, your operating system will not function properly. Maybe a failed model. Like we have Windows 8 as a failed model. Okay, what is the, I don't know how many of you know that Windows 8 is called as a failed model in this operating system version. Why it is called failed model is because the integration among these modules is not perfectly done. There are some lagging here. Sometimes you may be giving some controls that is not getting performed perfectly. So that is what the difference here. Okay, due to which that became a failed model. So this integration is most important. Who is going to do that? That is comes under your modularity. And last one is nothing but the convenience. So what do you mean by convenience is nothing but the user should be able to perform the operations well. For example, convenience means, let us suppose I am as a user right now I am teaching. Okay, so I am showing you the slide and performing some operation. Same way, I want to perform something else. I want to listen to the music simultaneously. Means I am taking the class as well as I am trying to listen to the music. And at the same time, I have opened a notepad and I'm typing some context there. Okay, so what happens here? Three things I am doing it simultaneously at a time. And all these three, whatever the things I'm doing here, all these three tasks, whatever I'm doing here, these are not getting means conflicted with each other. They are getting synchronized with each other. Okay, so that convenience, that ease of convenience is most important when you come across this. So because of these reasons, we need to provide this inter-process communication. Okay, now coming to this particular process communication, as we already discussed from the beginning, we are saying that processes want to communicate with each other. So we require some mechanism, okay, to communicate. So what is the mechanism here? We are calling it as nothing but inter-process communication. Now this inter-process communication is basically classified into two types here. We have something called a shared memory. Okay, so in this we'll see an example related to a producer-consumer problem. It's very easy to understand, very easy to remember and everything. Okay, we'll see how it is. Next, we have something called as message passing. So message passing, everyone knows about it. We are using in our day-to-day activities. For example, you people are trying to send a message in a WhatsApp, okay, to your friends. So that is what comes under message passing. So here, the processes can communicate by using message passing, or it can use shared memory. So shared memory can be used within your systems. Okay, so let's see how this exactly works in the coming slides. So I hope this is clear till now. So let's see about the shared memory. Okay. Yeah. So this is a systematic diagram which you people are seeing here. So the first one is related to your message passing and the second one is related to your shared memory. Remember, these are the diagrams taken from the prescribed group, that is nothing but Galvin. So in this, you people can see how the message passing structure will be and how the shared memory. Now if you observe here, there are two different processes. We have process A and process B. Now in between, what we are going to do is we will allow them to a specific amount of memory, and this memory will be shared by process A and process B. So what happens here, whenever process A is performing some task, it will actually load that information into this particular memory. Same way, whenever the process B wants some information with respect to process A, it will try to access them from the shared memory. Same, the vice versa is also implemented here. So whichever the information received by process A, that will be present in the shared memory, and that may be updated by process B, and that can be accessed by process A. So both can be versioned. Okay. But whereas coming to message passing, if you look here, we don't have anything called as shared memory here. Whatever the message we want to transmit to B, if you observe carefully, we cannot transmit directly from A to B. First, the information has to be transmitted to the kernel. Okay, let us, there are set of messages here, M0, M1, M2, so on up to Mn. So if process A want to send a message to process B, it has to first send that information to kernel. How we can send the information to kernel? So definitely we need to use the concept called as system calls. Using system calls only, we can transmit the messages to kernel. From the kernel will transmit or direct the message to process B. This is the whole scenario which is actually taking place in this particular thing. Okay, so here if you ask me which one is faster, so shared memory or message passing, clearly shared memory is faster when compared to message passing. Why? Because see, there is no interaction with the kernel here. If you observe here, process A and process B, they have no interaction with kernel, not at all. They are simply having a shared memory here. Here only these people are actually performing. So whenever you people are not interacting with the kernel, then definitely the speed will be increasing. Okay, the speed is much more faster. But whereas coming to here, each time you are sending a message, you need to generate a system call. So when you are generating a system call, definitely your process is going to get the speed or the performance of the system is going to decrease, because we are trying to access the hardware in order to transmit the message. So that's why. But which one is more efficient if you ask me? Message passing is more efficient than this, because this can be transmitted instantly, and moreover it is used for sending short messages. We cannot transmit long messages. Like for example, in your smartphones, if you wanted to send an individual message, every message will have a limit, right? You cannot send in the first message, like it will have some 120 characters or 120 words. I don't know exactly, but maybe 120 characters. Okay. So apart from that, if you're writing, apart from 120 characters, if you're writing anything, what will happen? It will be delivered to your friend, but as a second message, not as a first message. Okay. It's a continuation of your first message. So two messages will be delivered to your to the destination wherever we people are transmitting. So that is what actually being explained in this particular thing. Okay, so which one is more efficient? Message passing is more efficient when compared to shared memory. But if you talk about which one is faster, definitely shared memory is much more faster than message passing. Okay, so this is what all related to this. So let's go to the shared memory here. Yeah, so shared memory. So here, as we said that, so in the previous diagram, whatever we have seen here, so both process A and process B are sharing a memory. Now this process A and process B, they should have the address of this particular memory. Then only they can access it. Okay, not only two processes, if additional process C is coming now, he want to access this, then definitely whatever the address of this particular shared memory is there, that should be present in this process C. Now where in process C that particular address will be located is nothing but, we already discussed, process control block. This will contain the information. This will contain the address of this particular shared memory. Now this shared memory can be accessed by all three different processes simultaneously. Okay, so you got this? This is what actually happens here. So here he is explaining with the help of a simple producer-consumer problem. So it's very easy here. Okay. So coming to the shared memory, if you talk about here, producer-consumer problem, what he's saying is we have two concepts here, producer and consumer. So this is your producer, consumer. Now, what is the task of the producer? He will keep on producing data items. Okay. He will be keep on producing the data. And what is the task of the consumer? Obviously, you can understand. He will consume the data that is generated by the process. This is the whole task. Okay. So here, this is what we are going to see the example with respect to your shared memory. Okay. So the simple example what he has given here is, for example, the compiler is producing an assembly code. So let us suppose you people have written a C program and you are just compiling that particular program. So what happens? The compiler will generally create a assembly code, and this assembly code will be consumed by assembler. Then what the assembler is going to do? He will take that particular assembly code and convert that into a object module that is nothing but binary file, zeros and ones. Okay, so in your program, when you compile a C program, you will see object file. Okay, with the same name of the program, whatever you are given. For example, addition. So addition.obj, the object file, whatever is generated. Who is generating that? Assembler is generating it. But assembler is taking the input from the compiler, and compiler is generating assembly code. So that is given to the assembler. Then assembler will create an object module that is nothing but your zeros and ones file. So using that, the loader will consume it and then he will start executing it. So here this compiler is the producer and assembly code and assembler is the consumer. Same way here the object module. Okay, now assembler is the producer and the loader is the consumer. Sorry, consumer. So this way these people are actually trying to do access the information. So that's why it is called producer consumer problem. So they do exist some kind of what we call conditions we need to follow here. So what are the conditions we can have here is the producer, generally what we are saying here, the producer will produce the data item and the consumer will consume it. Okay, but there exists some kind of restrictions. So that data whatever is generated need to be stored some way. So we do have a buffer here. Okay, we need, this is what we call it as shared memory. In the previous slide, whatever you have seen the shared memory na, between process A and process B, this is what. So here we are using a term called as buffer in order to provide, because we are going to create a program now. We are going to write a program for producer and consumer. So definitely that shared memory should be given. So here we are using something called as buffer. This buffer is what we are calling it as shared memory. Now here the process will upload this buffer with the new data generated and the consumer will try to consume the item that is generated by process. So do we have any restrictions here? Definitely. So what are the restrictions what we can have here? The consumer can consume only the data items that are produced by the producer. If the producer is not producing any data, then the consumer cannot consume that particular data. That is what comes under synchronization. Okay, so that is what he's saying in this particular scenario. Is it clear? So here producer, what he's saying is producer will produce the data and that data will be consumed by the consumer. Okay, so whichever the data is not produced by the producer, the consumer cannot have it. So here coming to the buffer, this buffer is actually classified into two types. Okay, the shared memory, whatever we are saying here buffer, that is classified into two types, something called as unbounded buffer and bounded buffer. If we talk about unbounded buffer here, what it means to say is there is no boundary. Simple words, what we can say is there is no boundary for this particular memory. Okay, let me draw the diagram again so that you can understand. So here we have a producer, here we have a consumer. So in between I have a buffer, that is nothing but shit. Now this buffer is not having any kind of memory, means the producer can keep on producing several new data items and he can store the information here. Okay, and but whereas coming to consumer, he will have some restriction. What is the restriction is he can consume only the elements but data items which are generated by the producer. That's it. But coming to producer, he will not have any restriction because there is a lot of space available here. He will keep on producing that items. Okay, that is comes under unbounded. Then what about bounded here? Yeah, bounded is nothing but it has a limitation. Maybe some it will have some what we call blocks. Maybe let us suppose 5 blocks. So in this case, both the producer and the consumer will have certain restrictions. Now, what are the restrictions we do have? Earlier, when we use unbounded buffer, consumer is having a restriction, producer is having no restriction. He can keep on adding the data because lot of memory is there. And consumer can consume it only if the item is generated by the producer. And later on, he can consume the data. But whereas coming to bounded buffer, what is saying here is, in bounded buffer, if this particular buffer is full, let us suppose producer is producing an item, so all these blocks are filled. We have only 5 blocks, and all these 5 blocks have been occupied. Now, can he generate a new item now? Well, yes, he can generate a new item, but he cannot store that item in this particular block because already these blocks are filled up. So definitely he can't add the new one. This is the only restriction that is there with respect to the producer. Okay. But whereas coming to the consumer, he is also having a limitation. What is that? If this particular block is empty, if this particular block doesn't have any new data items, then he cannot consume. Obviously, if all the blocks are empty, what is going to consume the consumer? He cannot consume anything. So that is what the restriction we have for the producer as well as consumer. Okay, so what the producer has to do if these blocks are filled up means he has to wait if until one of the slot is empty. When it is empty, then he can add the new data item into this particular block. This is what the whole scenario related to your buffer. So we have two different type of buffers here, bounded and unbounded. Okay, so based on this, and so this is the diagrammatic, okay, programmatic way how we are going to execute the program here. So these are nothing but the pseudocodes which have been provided. So we need to first define the data structure here. So when we are defining the data structures, what is saying in initially, this is written in a pure C language. So hash defined buffer size 10. Now I think you people can understand now. This is what your shared memory. So what is the size of this? So this, what you can say, what kind of buffer it is? It is a bounded buffer. Why? It has certain limitations. So how many? It has only size of 10. It has, assume it as 10 blocks. It has only 10 blocks. So we are using structures here. Using structures, we are defining this particular buffer. So what we have here, item buffer. So this is the variable we are using for defining. So this buffer, this particular shared memory is what we are calling it as buffer. And what is the size of this buffer is nothing but 10. By default, it has only 10 blocks. So this is a bounded buffer. Okay. Now this bounded buffer will have two different type of pointers. These are what we call it as logical pointers. What do you mean the logical pointers? Nothing but they actually point, they have some specific meaning. So what is in? In actually, we have only two pointers, in and out. Now in actually refers to the next free space which is present in your system. Okay, the next free space, whatever is present in our system, that is represented by this particular variable or the pointer called in. And what about out? Out refers to the first filled space. Whichever the first filled block we are having, that is represented using out. So remember, you can call this as an array. You people, as a programmatic point of view, you can understand that this buffer, sorry, this is nothing but an array what we have declared here. Okay. Now in refers to the next free space which is present in the block. Let us suppose this is the block. Okay, so we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first space is filled. Let us suppose this is filled. Then in will consist of the value. So what is the value of in is equal to 1 because it refers to the next free space. What is the next free block we are having? That is at location 1. So in is equal to 1. Out refers to the first filled block. What is the first filled block we have here? 0. The index is 0. So out is equal to 1, in is equal to 1. Okay, in is equal to 1, out is equal to 0. Sorry. So this is the way it is going to represent. I'll just repeat it. I'll explain this to the example. You can understand more easily. Okay. So this is what the declaration part what we have here in this particular scenario. Now we have two different functions we are going to write. Okay. So that is what we call it. We can call it as a module, or you people can call it as functions, or you people can call it as blocks. So here the first one is producer block and consumer block, or a producer module or consumer module. If you talk about producer module, so we have a variable called as next produce. Now you people might have seen this item. Now don't assume that this is a variable, this is a data type. This item is a data type. Okay. So something like we are receiving from this particular, so item next. So this particular variable belongs to this particular data structure, whatever we are seeing here, structure concept we are using. So in this particular thing exists. Now here in this, what is saying is while true. Okay, so I'll explain the looping concept, you can understand. But before that, I'll explain with a small diagram. If you observe here, this is a block. Okay. So how many spaces we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have two pointers, right? In and out. So when we can say that the buffer is empty, when we can say the buffer is empty, when the in is equal to out. If the value of in and the out variable is same, pointers is same, then we say that the buffer is empty. Then when we can say that the buffer is full, when we have something called as in plus 1% buffer size is equal to out. You're getting my point? Something like now this one, this is equal to out. In plus 1% buffer size is equal to out, then we can say that the buffer is full. How? I'll explain with the example so that you can understand easily. Let us take a buffer here. I'm taking a small buffer here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is the array. You people can call it as a buffer or a shared memory. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are having how many slots exactly here? 5 slots. Okay, so since the index starts from 0, so we are representing from 0 to 4. Now, see here. What did I say earlier? When in is equal to out, then we say that the buffer is empty, isn't it? Now, what is the value of in right now? Since there are no values, so no data items being generated here, what is the value of in? 0. Then what is the value of out? It's also 0. So both are in. So what we are saying, the buffer is empty. What is the next case I say? When the buffer is full, let us suppose I'll start adding here. I'll show you. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let us suppose I have added some data element. Let us suppose I have added 1 here. Okay. So initially I have added 1. So what is the value of in now? What did I say? In is the pointer which refers to the next empty space. What is the next empty block we have here? This one. So what is the value of in? 1. Then what about the value of out now? What is out? Out refers to the first block which is non-empty. What is the first block here? Out is equal to 0. Now after some time, okay, there is a loop here. I'm trying to add the values. Next item I got is 2 and I'm going to fill that with the block 1. Now what is the value? We need to increment the value of in because it refers to the next empty space. What is the next empty space we have here? 2, isn't it? So now in is referring to 2. So that block 2 is empty. What about out then? Out refers to the first non-empty block. So obviously we did not consume. The consumer did not consume this one. So the out value is 0. Next, in is equal to how much we have here is, sorry, next I got another element variable or I want to add the data item. I have generated, producer generated 3. I am storing in 2. So what is the value of in now? It is going to get incremented. In is equal to 3. Then what about out? Out is equal to 0. Next, I have added one more element, something like 4. So what is the value of in? In is equal to 4. What about out? Out is equal to 0 because the consumer haven't consumed anything yet. Next, again I have one more value I added here, something called 5. Now what is the value of in now? Yes, what is the value of in? Well, remember this is a circular array what we usually have here. Okay, so in value people will be using something called as 5. But initially 5, since we are saying circular array, it is limited. We don't have a block called as 5. So immediately it will turn into 0. Okay, but in the program it will not do that. In the program it will be something like 5. Since this block is not there, it will simply terminate. What is the value of out here? Out is equal to how much value we have here? Out is nothing but 0 because nothing is got consumed here. Okay, so directly what you people can see, since I told that this is a circular array, we don't have 5, it will directly go to 0. Okay, now how we can determine now this is empty or full means what we said, in plus 1% buffer size is equal to out. What is the value of in initially we had here? Well, I actually wrote that here 0, but it's not 0 right now. It will become 0 later. Okay, so right now it is something, just a minute. Uh, yeah. Okay, okay. Just a minute, yeah. So here the value of n is equal to 5. Okay, it did not become 0. It will become 0 when the condition will be checked. So right now out is equal to how much? We have out is equal to 0. Now what is the condition? We said that this particular buffer is full is nothing but in plus 1% buffer size. What is the value of in here? 5. 5 plus 1. Okay, so it will be something like 4 plus 1. Initially, what is the value of in? So here the condition fails. So in value is 4. So it will be something 4 plus 1 percentage buffer size. What is the size of buffer we have taken here? 5. N is equal to 5. Equal to out. So what is the value of out here? 0. I think there is a small confusion here. I'll explain it once again. This particular concept. Now when I is equal to 5, what happened? The condition gets failed because we don't have additional block here. This block is not there. So definitely this condition fails. So what is the I value right now will be here? We'll be having is 4. So how the system, the next producer is going, means the producer is going to check is 4 plus 1. See, I value is 5 for consumer, not for producer. Producer, the value is 4. 4 plus 1% 5 is equal to out. What is the value of out here? I mean 0. So 5% 5 is equal to 0. So that is nothing but modulus. So 5 divided by 5, I think you can understand 5 ones 5. So what is the remainder? 0. So 0 equal to 0. If we get in this mechanism, then we say that the buffer is full. Okay, who is going to do that? The producer is going to find it up. Consumer will never find it up. Consumer will try to find out whether this particular buffer is empty or not. That is this. So you can see here, this is the logic being used here. Okay, let me erase it so that you can see it clearly. See here. If you talk about consumer process, we have in equal to out. So when in is equal to out, then what is saying? Do nothing. So he is asking the consumer, don't consume anything. Why? Because right now the buffer is empty. So he's asking not to consume anything. So if this condition fails, then he is asking you to execute this. You can see the intention here from here to here. Same intention is there. The next consumed is the variable which will actually contains the next item which need to be consumed equal to buffer out. Since buffer represents the first element whichever is present. So buffer out will provide the element which is present in the block that will be placed here. Now what will happen? Now that particular buffer, like something, this is the buffer we have. So initially we had 1 year, right? So this one will be consumed here. This will be brought into next consumed. Then what will happen now? This space becomes empty. There is no element here. Now out should refer to this particular variable, right? Out equal to out plus 1 buffer size. Why we are doing this percentage buffer size is nothing but to make sure we are not exceeding the size. Okay, the size should not exceed. That should be present within this particular limit. Like we have taken n equal to 5. So within that only the number should come. If it is coming beyond that means our program, whatever we are writing, is wrong in some particular location. This is what been explained in this particular scenario. Now in the same way, if you talk about your producer here, the producer what is going to see whether the particular buffer is full or not. That is what he is going to check. So here he is checking using this in plus 1% buffer size. So this is what I have explained previously. So this is what he is doing here. If this condition is true, what does this mean? This buffer is full. Okay, this buffer is full. So he is asking to do nothing. So don't create any new item. Just hold on until there is an empty slot here. Okay, in case this condition fails, means there exists some space in the buffer, then is asking you to perform the next step. Buffer in equal to next produced. Why he is using in here? Because in represents the next empty slot whichever is present in the buffer. So that is what been used here. Next produced will consist of the new item. This is the one. So it will add it. Once this is done, so that particular slot is filled up. Now what we need to do? The in should point to the next one. So in is equal to in plus 1% buffer size. So this is the way we people usually write a producer consumer problem. So here the synchronization is if the producer is not producing any new item, the consumer cannot consume that particular item. If he is producing, then only he can consume. If he is not producing, then he cannot consume it. This is what the whole scenario related to your producer-consumer problem. And here you might have understood now, this is the way the shared memory has been used, and this is the way we actually write programs using shared memory. Okay, so if time permits, you people can try to write a program. Since the code is already provided to you people can write a program where you people insert some values, you can delete some values. Same way you people can do it up. So already the main code is given. Just you have to structure it up in a systematic way. That's it. Okay, just if possible, try to do it. Okay, next what we have is message passing here. This is one of the most important mechanism which is used for communicating with other devices. Okay, the processes in other devices as well as our. But there are limitations as we already discussed. What are the limitations? We can transmit only a small amount of data. We can transmit small messages. We cannot transmit a huge amount of data. That is the only drawback. But in the coming today's world, the right now whatever the operating systems we are using, mostly they are using message passing. Why? Because it's very good for synchronization purpose, as well as we usually transmit the information in a format of bits. Very small amount of data we are transmitting. We are not taking, because you people know that we have distributed systems, right? Right now we people are storing our information in cloud. So what happens here? The cloud is not present in your system. It is present in some other location. So mostly whatever the data we are transmitting, that is done using message passing, because shared memory can be used for the system which is present within your system. That's the reason I told you that within the system, if your processes want to communicate with each other, we can use shared memory. But if a process want to communicate with another process which is present in different system, then definitely we need to use something called as message passing. So if this has actually different, so there are two different operations that are provided. You can call it as functions. Using these functions, we can communicate. First is send, receive. So message is nothing but, okay, send is nothing but to send a message from the source to destination. We use send. In order to receive the information from the source, we use a command called as receive. Now this message, whatever we people are transmitting, these can be of two types, as I told you, fixed and variable. If it is fixed, then the programming will be difficult, but system level implementation will be easy. But if it is a variable type, then programming becomes easy, but system level implementation will be difficult. Why it is difficult here is the system have to divide that message into packets. As we know, we are connected with the network. When we want to transmit the data, this data will be transmitted in a format of packets. I'll explain it. Like we people are writing, you people are transmitting a message to me saying, hi, how are you? You people have written this. So you people, so this message will not be delivered as it is. Now this will be split up into packets. Like for example, this is your first packet, hi. So your packet size is 2 bits. So hi, second packet, third packet, fourth packet, this is the fifth packet, and finally. So these packets will be transmitted into the network. This will be sent in the network, and from the network it will transmit and reach the destination, same packet. And in the destination part, these packets will be clubbed together based upon the sequence numbers, and then that will be displayed. Okay, this is the way. That's why. So what happens here? If it is a variable type, what will happen? We can keep as on, we can write as on as much we want. Then what will happen? The system will have a difficulty now. So splitting up. But if you have a fixed size, it can simply chop that your message into fixed size, and automatically it can try to transmit it. That is what is saying in this particular scenario. Okay. Now here we are going to take an example that we have two different processes, P and Q, and these two processes want to communicate with each other. So how they are going to communicate? So whenever these two processes want to communicate, first there should be a communication link between this process 1 and process 2. That is nothing but P and Q. We need to establish a communication link between P and Q. If this communication link is established, then only we can transmit the data. Now this communication link can be having certain issues here, like how this link can be created. Now whether it is associated with two processes or it can be associated with multiple processes. For example, in your WhatsApp, if you have a group, you people are chatting in your group. What are you doing? You are associated with multiple. 54 students are there. So 54 processes are getting communicated with each other, isn't it? So whether it is restricted. If you're doing individually, then that we have only two different processes, and within that we people are trying to communicate with each other. So that is what, this is what the issues what we have. How many links can be created for every pair of communicating process? So in between these two processes, how many pair of communication links we can communicate, means we can create, whether we can create only one, whether we can create more than one, or what. Now, what is the capacity of link? Means what is the data rate of that particular link? How fast the information can be transmitted? That is also one of the issue. Now, message size is also one of the issue, whether it is unidirectional or bidirectional. Unidirectional means one-way communication. So first I will be talking, then I will be in a silent mode. You will be start communicating with me. So once you are done, then you will be in a silent mode. I will start communicating to you people. So this is what the whole scenario. So these are some of the issues which need to be addressed when people are using this message queuing concept. Okay. So we'll see the example. You will be easily able to understand that in the coming this slide. See here. So here, these are the three ways how we people can actually communicate. We have a logical communication called direct or indirect, synchronous or asynchronous, automatic or explicit buffering. So we'll see them. These are very easy concepts. You people have to remember only the structure. See here. So if you talk about the direct communication, we have two different type of what we call syntaxes using which you people can communicate. Something called send and receive. Already we discussed. So in sender, it will consist of two different parameters. What are the parameters? P and message means it should consist of destination to which particular process we are sending. So P is the destination now. Send a message to process P. If you are using receive, it should have two parameters. So first parameter refers to from which process it is trying to get the data. Like receive a message from process P. I'll explain it. This is your process P. This is your process Q. Send P comma message. Send a message to process P. Where this particular command will be executed is in Q. This command is executed in Q. Receive Q comma message. Understand this very carefully. Receive a message from process P. So Q. So this receive will be executed in process P. Okay. So P is saying get the message from process Q, and Q is saying send the message to process P. This is the way it actually communicates. This is what we call direct communication. Now here it exactly has some properties here. What are the properties here is the link, whatever is there, that should be automatically get established. This is like client server model. Okay, the link is associated with how many pairs. So as I told you, there exists some restriction. This is the link. Simple logic. This link has how many endpoints? It has two endpoints. So what it's saying is, as per the link point of view, communication link point of view, that this link can have only two nodes, not more than that. Okay, so there will be only two nodes existing for each link. And whereas coming to the processor's point of view, he is saying that a pair of process, C comma Q are the pair. A pair of process can have only one link. Okay, both are same. The C and D both are same here for this one. B and C are both are same here. What is saying is this communication link can have only two different nodes to communicate with each other. The next point, what is saying that these pairs C and Q can have only one communication link. Both are having same meaning, but they are written with a different perspective. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so these are some of the properties we people have to keep in mind. Then we have something called as indirect communication. Whereas coming to indirect communication, what happens? We cannot directly communicate. P and Q will have a mailbox here. Every process will have a mailbox. So P will send the first message to the mailbox. From the mailbox, it will be transmitted to the mailbox of the queue. From there, the queue will be active. This is something like a mailbox, what we people usually place in our outside our home, near to the gate. So whenever the postman comes up, he will dump the message into that particular box, right? Same way, this is what we call it as mailbox here. So every process will have a mailbox. Sometimes these processes may be sharing a common mailbox. Like this is mailbox A, this both are same. So these two processes are same accessing a same mailbox like P and Q are same. So this is a mailbox shared by P and Q. So it also has certain restrictions here. So whether these processes should have a single mailbox or each process should have a separate mailbox. That is one issue they have to come across. So for that they are saying some situations we can have a separate mailbox. Some situations we may have a single mailbox that is shared by these particular processes. Okay. Apart from that, what about the communication link? How many links can be associated? Well, here multiple links can associate with different pair of processes. So it's not necessary that P and Q should have only a single communication link. They can have multiple things. That is what it's saying. Okay, and the links can be unidirectional or bidirectional here. Means both way communication can take place or a one-way communication. That's up to the system. Nowadays, we people are using bidirectional only. Okay. So this is the steps whatever we have discussed. That is what been explained here. Indirect communication, as I told you, send. So here, this is the difference we have. Send a message to mailbox A, receive a message from mailbox. Okay, A. This is the way it represents. So since I told you here, let us suppose P1 is there, P2 is there, P3 is there. If all the three are sharing the same mailbox, there are some issues. Like P1 is sending a message. Now, simultaneously, P2 is trying to receive, P3 is also receiving it. But he has sent a message only to P2. Now, then who should get that particular message, whether P2 or P3? So there is a conflict here. Okay. So in order to overcome that conflict, whatever we discussed earlier, that has been explained here. Allow a link to be associated with that much two processes. So between two processes only, allow the link to have communicated. Another what is saying is we can have only one process at a time execute a receive operation. Means since P2 and P3 are simultaneously call the receive, don't allow that. Allow only one of the process to first call receive. Based on that, the message will be going to that first process. Then the second process, whatever it might be. This is what some of the solutions which have been provided. You people just can go through it. These are very easy related to this particular message passing concept. After that, we have synchronization here. So as we already discussed, so in this we have two concepts which are most important: blocking send and blocking receive. Blocking send in the sense nothing but whenever there are two processes here, this process is sending a message. After sending the message, this process will block itself. It will block himself until he is getting a message from Q. That is what we call blocking send. Blocking receive in the send is nothing but until and unless this particular receiver is getting a message from P, he will block himself. He will not perform any other kind of task. That is what comes under your blocking send and blocking receive. Then finally we have something called as non-blocking, that is asynchronous in nature. See, blocking is synchronous in nature, non-blocking is asynchronous. What does non-blocking means? Nothing but we have a process P and Q. P will send a message to Q, and after that he will not wait for the response. He will start doing some other task. He will start performing some other task. Same way, the queue will not be waiting for this particular process to receive. He will be doing some other task here. So whenever he get a chance, whenever he is getting a message from P, he will then start performing operation on that. Till that time, he will be utilizing the time and he will do the some other task. That is what is saying in this particular scenario. That's it. That are the two things what we have related to your synchronization and asynchronous communication. Okay, synchronization, non-synchronization. The last but not the least is buffering here. So what do you mean by buffering here is nothing but whatever the mailbox we have used and whatever the shared memory we have used, the mailbox, that is what it's talking about. Whether it is a direct communication or indirect, messages will be definitely exchanged. Okay, so this is a temporary queue he is talking about. Why? Because once the message is delivered, that message will be deleted from that particular buffer. Okay, whatever the mailbox is using or a buffer I'm talking about, the message will be deleted from that particular buffer. So here this this buffering is of three types: zero capacity, bounded capacity. Okay, this is unbounded. Sorry, this is unbounded. Zero capacity means there will not be any message stored in this. Whatever the message is transmitted from P to Q, that will be directly transmitted to P to Q. It will not be stored. Bounded means in between P and Q, whatever the mailbox is there, it will have some memory in KB. So it will store the information in this. Unbounded means no limit. Maybe MB, GB. Definitely GB is not possible. Maybe till MB. Some 200 MB, 30 MB, 300 MB. That much data will be there. So all the information will be stored in that particular mailbox. So this is what the whole thing related to your message passing and your shared memory. Okay. So thank you for watching this video.